Hello and welcome to Gravitas Plus. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. This Sunday, France is going to polls. The land of love, wine, cheese, literature, also the birthplace of modern democracy. Not taking away from the Greeks, of course, they invented democracy, but it was France which injected a modern meaning to it. It was France which made democracy a global phenomenon. Quick history. In 1789, a crowd of ordinary men and women revolted against the French monarchy. Through their collective action, they ensured the creation of a system based on and governed by a constitution. In history books, they call this event the French Revolution, an uprising which inspired movements the world over. Several countries broke the shackles of colonialism to become modern, independent nation-states too. The whole of South America, for instance. It had transitioned to democracy by the 19th century. More than 200 years on, the French continue to inspire, and their influence is hard to overstate. Their country is smaller than Texas, but has the second strongest military in Europe, the second biggest economy in the European Union, and the fifth biggest economy in the world. It ranks first on the Global Soft Power Index. It's also the most visited country in the world. Plus, France is the only country to still have sovereign territory on 5 continents, and the only country to be a founding member of the United Nations Security Council, of NATO and the European Union. Its diplomatic representation is second in size only to the United States of America, which basically means that within the European Union, nothing can happen without France. This country is the de facto leader of Europe. So as the French head out to vote, they will not only seal the fate of their country, but will also determine the future of Europe. The path it will take for the next 5 years, the many policies it could implement vis-à-vis the pandemic, the climate emergency, purchasing power, cost of living, immigration, and above all, the conflict in Ukraine. Long story short, this election is crucial not just for France, but the whole of Europe. So who will the French elect? Will they give their current president a second chance, or will they crown a new leader? Let's try to find out, starting with a quick primer, how the French political system works. France is a semi-presidential democracy. The president is at the center of power, but the prime minister heads the government, and both are answerable to the National Assembly. The president is elected by the French public for a 5-year term through what they call direct universal suffrage. The president has a 5-year term, and this distinguishes France from the executive systems of other European countries. Now, once elected, the president chooses the prime minister, who in turn picks the other members of the government and presides over the cabinet to enact laws. So the prime minister drives government action and the president determines government policy. Next question. How do you become president? In order to apply, you need 500 signatures of elected officials. They should be from at least 30 different government departments across France. A candidate can be an independent, or he or she can represent a political party. How many candidates can apply? There is no limit. In 2002, there were 16 candidates. In 2017, there were 11. And this year, 2022, there are 12 candidates. Each candidate has the right to an equal media presence, the right to radio and TV space, and they're all allotted equal slots for speaking, equal broadcast time. And this is strictly monitored throughout their campaigns. The money they spend on campaigns is also monitored. In the first round, the spending must not exceed 16.9 million euros. In the second round, the limit is 22.5 million euros. This year, the first round is scheduled for the 10th of April, the second round for the 24th of April. Why are there 2 rounds? Because the French believe that you first vote with your heart and then with your head. In the first round, all 12 candidates will be eligible for the vote. The ones who get the maximum votes will go to the second round, and whoever wins the second round will take office on the 13th of May. Now that you know how the election works, let's introduce you to the 12 candidates. 8 men and 4 women. Together they represent all sides of the political spectrum in France. Left, right, center, green, communist, capitalist. Out of these, 3 candidates have emerged as frontrunners. This is Marine Le Pen, nicknamed the Phoenix, leader of the National Front, is a far-right political party. This is her 3rd bid for presidency. She lost the race both in 2012 and 2017. This year, she has a better chance of winning. Opinion polls show 47% French voters want Le Pen to win. What does she stand for? Well, Le Pen is opposed to globalization. She considers it a threat to the French society. She wants to take France out of America's sphere of influence. She has proposed the replacement of the World Trade Organization and the abolition of the International Monetary Fund. She's also against immigration and considers it a tool of Islamic extremism. Critics say these promises are a political stunt and that once in power, if she ever gets to power, Le Pen will not execute half of them. This is Eric Zemmour, a TV star turned politician. They call him the French Donald Trump. Le Pen says Zemmour makes her look reasonable. And she has a point. It's because of his fiery political views. He considers his leanings as Gaulo-Bonapartist, a set of views inspired from Charles de Gaulle and Napoleon Bonaparte. What are these views? That only great men can save the French Republic. Small problem. Zemmour's own track record has not been that great. He has been convicted several times of making hate speeches on immigration, on Islam, feminism, and homosexuality. His supporters say Zemmour is highly misunderstood, that he only speaks facts, however bitter they might be. This support is evident in Zemmour's meteoric rise. Opinion polls put him on the third spot. His television appearances cause frenzy. His statements grab front-page headlines. Many expect him to spring a surprise on election day. And this is Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, a hardcore centrist and a favorite to win. In 2017, this former banker made history. He became the youngest president of France. He was just 39 years old. 5 years on, he's expected to win again, courtesy his style of politics. You see, Macron has dumped the traditional rule book of politics. He has steered clear of the classic left-right division. He promotes liberalism. He also condemns Islamism. He bats for secularism, but also upholds the French identity. Opinion polls show Macron's strategy has worked. 53% of French citizens want him to be re-elected. And this is not just because of the brand that he has built. Look at his report card. Under Macron's leadership, France's GDP has grown by 7%, unemployment has dropped to 7.2%, and the crime rate has fallen to 27%. Macron has also cracked down on radical Islam. He has introduced laws on countering extremism. He has put a ban on foreign funding of mosques in France. He has imposed tougher measures on immigration. Even on Ukraine, Macron has proven to be a statesman. He is Europe's de facto leader at the moment and a bridgehead for Russia and America. He has managed to negotiate talks between Washington, D.C. and Moscow. At the same time, he has condemned both sides without mincing words. Watch this.
La Russie n'est pas agressée, elle est l'agresseur. Cette guerre est encore moins, comme une propagande insoutenable voudrait le faire penser, une lutte contre le nazisme. C'est un mensonge. D'abord être factuel et ensuite, en effet, tout faire pour ne pas que la situation dérape. Je n'utiliserai pas ce genre de propos parce que je continue de discuter avec le président Poutine.
Now to the flip side of the equation. Critics say Macron works only for the elite, that he's a champion of the rich, disconnected from the masses. They say the common man struggles to relate to him. They also say that there's a gap between his words and actions, that he hasn't delivered on some of his promises. He promised to change the pension system, for example, to let workers retire at 65 instead of 62. Well, this hasn't happened. His labour reforms have not been well received either. Throughout his presidency, we've seen countless yellow vest demonstrations against labour laws. Macron also made promises on increasing gender equality, providing equal opportunities to men and women, but the issue was sidelined after he came to power. It was pushed to a junior ministry. Feminist groups say that Macron has failed them. The gender pay gap has not been filled in France, and cases of domestic violence have risen sharply. So to put it simply, Emmanuel Macron is on tricky terrain. He may have the edge in opinion polls, but his victory is not a foregone conclusion. Especially not when you look at his opponents, those who are promising to do everything that Macron does 2 times better. Plus, the French electorate is highly polarized. People who voted out of duty or were loyal to one party or faithful to one candidate no longer exist. Reports say 40% of the voters are still undecided. That's 4 in every 10 voters. What does this tell you? That this election is going down to the wire. The outcome is uncertain. Only the future will tell. Or as the French say, qui vivra verra. Those who live shall see.